Welcome to the Busy Latter-day Saint, where righteous desires and living life come together. Here, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints discuss their challenges and successes in studying the Scriptures, and where listeners come to learn more about studying the Scriptures. I'm your host, Richard Bernard. The music for this program is by Marvin Goldstein and used with his permission. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I encourage you to comment on this episode or the podcast in general. To leave a comment, click on the link in the show notes. I encourage you to subscribe to the podcast to be informed when a new episode has been posted. You subscribe by tapping on the subscribe or follow button. Now, each podcast app is different, so if you don't see the follow or subscribe button, a simple Google search about the app you are using will show you how. If you enjoy this podcast and have benefited from it, I encourage you to start donating a few dollars to the General Missionary Fund each month. Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints know Susan Easton Black as a prolific writer, her scholarship in church history, and her ability to pack a room, regardless of the size, whenever she speaks. What most members may not know is her history. And now's your chance to know about Susan, the person. Come and learn about Miss Universe and a special skill Susan developed in her early years, and being a circus act, and how fashion played a unique role in her life, how she found a better way to earn money instead of working at a bakery for 90 cents an hour, and of course, her unique courtship with scholar and author George Durant. And there is so much more. You'll find yourself laughing and, more importantly, being spiritually uplifted as Susan tells of her most interesting life. And now, here's Susan. Well, Susan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
I've been excited to have this time with you. There are many great women in the church, so I need to preface that a little bit. But there are two women I've always wanted to have time with, and you're one of them.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I wouldn't care if it's a podcast or if it was just having lunch together.
Thank you.
To me, you are just. I'm always amazed when I hear you speak.
Thank you.
And so anyway, you're one of them. Sherry Dew's the other one. So maybe someday I'll be able to talk to her. But what I want to start with is where you grew up.
Okay, I was born and raised in Long Beach, California.
Mm-hmm. And were you there all the way through high school? Or?
All the way through high school.
Okay. And then after high school, did you go to college? What did you do?
So I went to BYU for my undergraduate degree. I graduated in political science. I then went back to California, got a master's, and came back to BYU to get a doctorate degree.
Okay. Political science.
Mm-hmm.
Do you follow politics now?
I sure do. It's the good and the bad.
and do you cry when you read what's going on?
I try not to, but I have been known to be opinionated.
Oh my goodness, I read the news and I get depressed. And I don't care if it's Republican or Democrats or who it is. It's just I get very depressed just seeing what's going on in our country. Yeah. It's very sad. Well, we went through that very quickly. Marriage-wise, when did you first get married?
Well, out of college,
mm-hmm.
and became the mother of 3 kids, and life just rolled on. I've always liked books. Your audience might be interested in how I became so interested in books, right?
Yes.
Because I've now written, I think I'm at 180 books.
Yeah, I was wondering, are they all here?
Well, if you look right behind you, you'll see, the trail going across and then coming down. But we're sitting here in the library. But how it started for me, the family I grew up in was pretty affluent. And we used to have in Long Beach, they always had the Miss Universe contest. And so my father liked to go to the parades where they had the women in the bathing suits. But my mother refused to go. And so I would go with Dad, and I'd run through the crowds, and I'd make it to the curb, and I'd hear my father coming behind me and saying, I've lost my daughter, make way. And then we'd both sit on the curb, right? And he would say to me, oh, well, who do you think's the most beautiful? There was Miss Brazil and Miss whoever, and finally it'd say, and one day, Susan, you'll be Miss Universe. And I bought it.
Wow.
Until I was about, I don't know, I guess around 12, maybe not quite. And one day at one of those parades, my dad said, maybe you could be Miss Welcome to Long Beach.
No.
And suddenly I realized that my dad didn't think I could win, I had no chance. So my parents, then realizing that I was, wondering what in the world I could possibly be, took me through a series of teachers, piano, art, tumbling, dance, you name it, all of the possible talents that any young woman should pick up. And none of them worked for me. Anyway, I still struggle. Even when we were making masks during the COVID epidemic, I said to a friend, I'll pin it for you and then you sew it. No. And we were laughing this morning playing pickleball, and she goes, I had to take out all your pins. You couldn't even do that. So no talents that way. But when I'm in 7th grade, I'm picked out to take a 1-hour class for a year. And I think the school district was doing something like Evelyn Wood speed reading.
Oh, okay.
And so I was chosen. I'd always done well in school, not on citizenship. Way too fun for that. But always academics. I could always shine. And so there was myself. There was another student that she knew would graduate from high school, and that's it. And then there was a student that if he could have left school at that very moment, he would be gone. But they put us in a room that was like a closet, and we had 3 microfilm readers. For your younger listening audience, a microfilm reader is like this machine, and you have a film that runs through it, and you crank it with your hand, and then you look into this bright instrument that's now illuminated, and you'd run these little film strips going through. And so I recall that the first film strip was the old Dick and Jane, readers, the early ones that were Run Dick, Run, see Jane, here's Grandma, finally here comes Spot. And then instead of asking, what did you see, they would have a number on the page. And they'd say, well, on page number 6, what did you see? And the crazy thing, I knew what I saw.
Really? Wow.
And they taught me how to look in the page at the middle, and instead of reading it, all the way across, line upon line upon line, to look in the middle and kind of take a picture of it and memorize it. Well, the crazy thing, couldn't draw, couldn't dance, but I became incredible with this looking in the microfilm. And I can remember saying to my father, hey, I think I could be Miss Universe. What we'll do is you just have the brothers take the microfilm reader on the stage, and then you crank it at whatever number, and I'll tell you what's on there. And anyway, so big laughs.
It's called a teleprompter.
Yeah, teleprompter. And so anyway, by the time the teachers, the principal, superintendent had come, I became a circus act. So like the bearded lady, the man who could swallow fire, the sword, whatever it was. And so that's kind of how it began.
So you would look at a book and could tell people what it was on what page?
Yep.
Yeah.
And people would say, oh my gosh, you just have this amazing memory. It must be a gift. Well, it was a gift I worked on for a year. And pretty soon I got it. But you realize, as a young person, I always wanted to be popular in school, and I like sports. And it's never popular when you always know the right answer.
Yes.
You can know it once or twice, but on a spelling bee, history bee, whatever it is, if you're always the go-to, not so great.
Yeah.
And so I hit it a little bit and was actually pretty successful. My brother even said in college he thought I didn't major in political science, that I had actually majored in social. So I hit it pretty well, but suddenly it's time to return to work. And So I now have a doctorate, and I'd say my peers, for the most part, well, I don't know any that went on. Even in my own family, my brothers know, and but I had this talent.
I've seen speed readers. Are you doing that also? I mean, can you go quite quickly through a page?
I go quite quickly.
Okay.
Probably as fast as you could turn it.
Okay, wow. Well, that certainly helps with research.
It certainly helped with research. And the most amazing thing, I'm a professor in the finance field, teaching financial portfolio analysis. And then we have, as our president of BYU, now President Dallin H. Oaks. Mm-hmm. And he looks over the faculty, the women, and he wanted to make sure there was a woman in every college. So at a university, you need there was somebody wearing a skirt that was not the secretary. And so I don't know, he looked over the 4 or 5 of us that were teaching back then. I'm sure there were others, but most of the women were in nursing, education, physical education. And so I was asked, do you want to come join religion? They've never had a woman over there. And my knee-jerk answer was no. I am not going to fit in. Yeah. This would not be a happy time for me. I do not want to be a fireside queen. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, when you make a bad choice. And so the second opportunity, I go, okay, I promise I can do it, never look back. And awkward at first, but eventually we're in a meeting, and one of the men says, now wait a minute, who did John Taylor stay with in the Toronto area? And everybody goes blank, and my hand goes up. So pretty soon I think I was more than tolerated. I actually think at some point I became liked by my colleagues, but I had a great time.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because I know you came in at the time when it was male-dominated and just the struggles you had. You must have had struggles.
There's no question. So, the men, to do social things together, they would go to lunch, they'd play racquetball, sometimes they go swimming. And obviously I can't join them. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know, it just wouldn't be right. How would I ever say to my kids, well, here's what I did today? Yeah. And so I just typed. And maybe those piano lessons really did pay off, but got a secretary. I started when they had upright typewriters and mimeograph machines, and eventually when they've got computers. And it's kind of like writing is like playing the piano. I mean, when you start off, you can do chopsticks. But if you only play chopsticks, you're not going to get any better.
That's right.
But, if you start learning things and you learn that and you learn this, and it's like a puzzle, and pretty soon the details start filling in, and pretty soon you can write, like you're doing a symphony. And it became something that I enjoyed. But my first writing, I actually wrote fashion shows.
Oh.
And
well, now, wait a minute. I heard somewhere that you were a model.
Well, there was a time when I was, you'd have to shave off 60 years. But when I went through school, that was part of the way that I supported myself.
Oh.
And but then as the years came and went, I thought maybe I'd go back to modeling. But when they looked at me the next time, they go, no way, but would you be willing to write our fashion shows?
Well, I always picture a model. They're usually about 5'9", 6 feet, 6'1".
Oh, those are the good, yes,
yeah,
now.
And you're not that height.
Well, when I was going to college, there was a woman over in Europe named Twiggy.
Oh, yes.
And she was short, skinny, turned sideways, kind of vanished kind of look. And I fit that look back then. Okay. And so I was picked out. Obviously, within a few years it had all changed. But it had gone from the kind of Marilyn Monroe, Rita Hayworth kind of look to Twiggy in Europe.
Yeah, I remember that.
And suddenly, man, my life was made. I went from working in a bakery at 90 cents an hour to suddenly I've got $40 an hour just standing there smiling. I'm like, I can do this.
Yes. Wow. Now, so that's one thing I did want to ask you about your workflow when you write a book. I mean, you're a prolific writer, and obviously you've answered the question about the research, because most people do research and
never get to write a book.
Not write a book, or they would have at that time, go back a few years before computers, have index cards of everything that they've researched.
Oh yes, and files at Nuno Bounds. I have lots of colleagues like that.
But that's not a problem with you. You don't need those files.
Well, I still need to be able to access, know the endnote, and remember where I got it.
Okay.
You know, the endnotes are always the bane of anybody's existence.
Yeah.
But yes, it's different.
So, and then your actual writing, then it, like you said, it just kind of flows when you start.
Pretty much. I have a system. You know, it's kind of like a pattern. When you're making a dress, you follow a pattern, and if you do it correct, I suppose, you know, you have something you're not embarrassed to be seen in.
Yeah.
And it's the same with writing a book. I have a pattern that works for me. It's worked on all kinds of random books.
Well, now, of all the books you've written, do you have one favorite that you really enjoyed working on?
Well, it's always the current one I'm writing, isn't it?
Oh, okay.
So, you know, it can't be something in the past. But for me, a good day is not a good day if I haven't written and I haven't learned something.
Oh, wow.
And so if it's just, well, okay, here's how that started for me. My one time, it's all happening about the very same time with that class, you know, I had. But I was with my best friend. We'd had a wonderful time. We'd come home, and now I'm gossiping about my best friend on the phone with another friend. Got it? Mm-hmm. So I'd had a wonderful time. I learned all these things. And my father, who had gone to Chicago Law School and then Georgetown to finish up and work for a congressman, he's listening to me as I'm now gossiping about my friend. And he writes me a simple note that changed my life. He goes, small people talk about people. Medium-sized people, they talk about events. But big people learn to talk about ideas. Mm-hmm. Wow. And being small in stature, I thought my dad had pegged me. And I did not want to spend a life being the neighborhood gossip. Yeah. That is not fun. Yeah. And I didn't want to spend a life saying, did you pick up the cleaners? You know, did you get Johnny to the soccer game? Are we da-da-da-da-da? And then whoosh, was that a great day. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to spend a life where I could learn an idea, have something really amazing to think about. Wow. And for me, the place to do that was a university.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're writing every day, even like today?
Yes, even today.
Even today. Wow.
Yeah, I get up early so I can make sure I
how early do you get up to write?
Oh, I don't know. I'm usually by 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, what time do you go to bed?
I don't seem to require as much sleep. You know, when you get older, get old as me, you'll be able to say, you know, I don't know, maybe I catch winks of it now and then through the day, but I'm pretty driven.
Oh, okay. All right.
I never have lost the drive.
Wow.
You know, I was with my brother last night and I go, hey, so how do you feel your day? And I'm thinking to myself, it wouldn't be a good day for me, even though it's a good day for him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So your publisher's always waiting for the next book?
I hope so.
Well, you've led quite an interesting life.
I think so. No complaints.
Yeah, you really have. And now I begin to understand, when people say that they've heard you speak, they go, she just keeps going and going and going, and like, she doesn't have notes in front of her. And now I understand why.
Yeah. One day I've had some of the people that have asked me to speak through the years, like, you know, when we used to have Know Your Religion, and I'd go around and they go, I'd sit in that audience and I'd just wait for your computer chip to fall out, Susan. And I'm prepared to stand up. Yeah, so far not. You know, you got to check yourself.
Yeah. Well, BYU Education Week is next week, and I noticed that you were speaking 4 times next week.
Yep, that's right.
And I'm assuming you really don't need any preparation.
You know what I do need is the PowerPoints. Because I need the audience to be able to see, so that I am not sure in my delivery if I'm descriptive enough where I think the PowerPoints, but they're not. I never use ones that are text filled. Right. You know how you see somebody and they...
Yeah, well, you shouldn't do that anyway. Yeah. I used to have to do a lot of presentations in the business world, and I learned real quick that 1 or 2 words is all you need.
Yep.
Otherwise, people are not looking at me, they're looking up there, and they're not paying attention.
So anyway, just making those happen, but those are done now, so I'm set.
Okay. You spoke for the Sons of the Pioneer about, I guess, a month ago, and you talked about how you and George got married.
That was an amazing event.
Yes, it was an amazing event. And just share with the audience, you were widowed and George was widowed.
Right.
And
so what happened was George was at BYU in 1976 teaching religion, and I was there in 76. And George had his office across the hall. And he was only there a short time, and then he's off working in Salt Lake for the church and eventually the MTC president. And he is one of our faculty whose name went up in lights. And I just kept walking to and from work. Mm-hmm. So I would see him occasionally at a faculty Christmas social. And we'd swap jokes. And anyway, it was always fun to see him. But then I'm now 38 years since I first met him. And he was always funny in the faculty meetings. He was not pretentious. Mm. And actually, he was nice to me. And so we're 38 years later. I'm now a widow. He's a widower. And I received a phone call, and he asked if he could come see me. And I thought, that's odd. Religion people, we don't do that.
Yeah.
And anyway, so because he had known my husband and they had taken an art class together, I thought, he's so spiritual, he probably has a message for me, and I'm miserable. So anyway.
Well, how long were you widowed?
I had been a widow now about maybe 5-6 months.
Oh, okay.
And so he rang the doorbell, and then he put his arms around me, and the polite thing is count. Every woman knows you count 1 second 1, 1 second 2, and you break.
Yeah.
But George didn't break, and the way he tells the story is that I'm a very large lady, and that he could not get away, that I just had trapped him. But anyway, and so I push him away. And I said, well, George, it looked like you did want to see me. And he says, well, could we talk? And he comes inside my living room and asks me to marry him. And there was no first date.
Yeah,
there was no
date or anything. Flowers?
No flowers, no candy. There was no, and it was a precursor of what I could expect. And anyway, and then, I go, oh, are you kidding me? No way. And he said, well, I'm doing the missionary approach. You always tell the investigator you want him ultimately to enter the waters of baptism. He says, but now I'm going to work on that. And, I laughed and I said, you're so funny. And I go, no way. And then he goes, well, show me my house.
Now, is it this house here?
It's this house here. And anyway, and so I kicked him out. And the next day was school, and I go to my class, and it was in the Martin building on the BYU campus. And I don't know, maybe 250 kids are sitting there. And suddenly I see George. And I said, well, I want to invite one of my old colleagues to give the opening prayer. And so he comes to the mic, and, he hits it, can everybody hear this? And he goes, I want you to know I love your teacher. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And he goes, and I've asked her to marry me, and all these kids with their cell phones are now capturing this. And he says, I don't like her answer, and I'm more than willing to pray, but I can't do it until she gives me a better answer. And oh, wow. But I finally teach the class, but after class, colleagues are going, geez, Susan. So anyway, for about the next year, George was omnipresent. I would go out to get the newspaper, he's there. I'd go out to work in the garden, he's already working in it.
Did he live fairly close?
No, he lives in American Forks, so he's a good
really
half hour away. And every time he sees me, he's asking to marry me. And and my kids, they're taking him aside saying, hey, George, we all like you, but you got to stop pushing Mom. She's just hating this. And I don't know. One time I'm speaking down in St. George, and George has, learned about it from the web, and he's down there, and he goes, come on, just ride with me. And we go up to Kolob Canyon, and we get out of the car, and we walked as far as old duffers can walk, which means we got out and walked to the edge of the cliff. And he says, well, here's a diamond. And he opens it up, and I go, George, I don't see a diamond. And he goes, we got to get it in the right light. And I don't know, maybe too many lessons in Relief Society on compassion. Anyway, we married, and it's now been a decade, and I've laughed my head off. Anyway, it's just been marvelous.
Wonderful.
Just marvelous.
That's such a wonderful story.
Yeah.
That really is a wonderful story.
And we've served together 4 missions now. I think we'd go again, but I'm not sure the church would have us. I used to think, you just needed to fog a mirror and you'd be chosen, but I think we passed that point. So that's where we're at.
You're not much older than I am.
Oh, I don't know.
So, I'm 74.
Oh, I'm still older. I got you.
Well, I know you're older, but I don't know if you're that much older. Anyway, now, when I came here, you said that you also worked in with the Come Follow Me. What part did you play in that? Well,
there were several. There were the main writers, and George and I at that point had just finished a mission. That one was in Nauvoo, where we'd done. I loved the mission. It was a lot of research. I'm not sure George did.
No.
He would talk to the librarians while I'm running through the stacks trying to find the stuff. And anyway, while on that mission, we got a call inviting us to serve under Ted Collister, who was then the general president. And we served up there for a year and a half. And I think I was more the red pen than most. Although I can smile and this and that, you'd be amazed what I can do to a manuscript. And so, but we had a great time and loved the kind of team of writers that we worked with.
Okay, very good. Well, as I mentioned to you, that not too many members of the church are studying the scriptures. How do you study the scriptures?
Well, okay, I would say George and I have a system. Like if we were talking about the Doctrine and Covenants, I have memorized the section names. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, section 10, right?
Okay.
And George memorizes the contents.
Oh, okay.
So together we're great students of the scriptures. Okay, so for me, I always try to have a project where the scriptures are part of my life.
Okay.
So for me, I can read the scriptures with George, but I never view that as studying it. I need to have a pen, pencil in hand and go, oh, that's amazing, and then put myself into realms of thought.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same thing. My wife and I will read the scriptures in the morning together, but it's not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same that, I don't know, like I'm looking at, and the Jaredites are saying so-and-so is descended from so-and-so who's the son of, and then I go, well, why did they go son of, and then, so I can get lost in thought on details where George likes seeing the picture as a whole. I always go, George, you're really a generalist, and I get stuck in the specifics.
Yeah, you get into the details.
Yeah.
Well, have you used the same hard copy of the scriptures for all these years?
I had been. But then they changed in the 80s,
yes,
right?
Back in the 80s or 70s. Anyway.
But when they changed it was, but I can remember going to church and having my hard copy of the Book of Mormon where I'd underlined every time, some derivative of the name of God was used. Mm-hmm. And then I went through what were his characteristics, and, I had all these codes and things, and I'm sitting there looking at it during sacrament meeting, and the friend I'm sitting next to said, what do you think the Lord thinks about you, Susan, for graffitiing his book? You've got lines, you've got charts, you got, the red code, the blue, the green, and I go, he loves me because I've done that.
Yes.
But then, you start over with newer copies. Yeah. And now I need bigger typed copies, so it's never the same as my original ones. Those meant the world to me.
Yeah. Well, now Come Follow Me, it's the Old Testament.
Right.
So what do you do with the Old Testament?
Well, lucky for me is I am a Sunday school teacher of the 13, 14-year-olds.
Oh, that's right. You mentioned that when you spoke the last time. I got it. They're what age? 13?
13, 14.
13? And they're sitting still listening to you.
Well, we're actually pretty fun. We're down in the scout room.
Oh, okay.
So it takes us a floor and a little bit more. So we're in the bowels of the church. And I think they like me. It isn't just because I bring treats, but...
Oh, you bring treats, okay.
But we really get into the stories, and sometimes we act them out.
Oh, you act them out.
Yeah, so for example, this last time we did Esther, and I took them through the Festival of Purim, where when you mention Mordecai, everybody yells, yay, and you mention Esther, and everybody goes, ah, yeah. And then Haman, and they go, boo, so I think they got the story. I think they liked it, but being a Sunday school teacher helps me do a deeper dive into that portion of the scriptures.
Now, being 13-year-olds, do some of them have these devices that they bring to class?
Yeah, they actually do. Very few bring hard copy scriptures.
Okay. And do you have a problem with them being on the device and not listening to you, like maybe checking out the internet? Or?
No, that doesn't happen in my class.
It doesn't happen, okay.
I think it's, because there's only 9, I can eyeball them.
Yes.
And, the fear and trepidation they might be called on.
Yeah. Well, my experience in all the devotionals I give, and I get a lot of email throughout the country also asking people asking me for various help and things. And one of the things is with these students, we've had teachers say we don't want these in our classroom, and that's not what we want. We want the youth to have them. In fact, I was at a meeting in Salt Lake, and of course it was on Zoom during COVID. There was about 12 or 15 of us there. They mentioned a stake in Utah that was requesting the youth not bring to youth conference these devices, to leave them at home. And everyone in the group went, they did what? No, you have them bring them, and now we have to teach them how to use them.
Right. I think that, the kids are so great with their understanding of how to use their phones.
Yeah.
They're just an appendage to them.
Yeah,
it'd be hard to take it away, that's for sure.
Now, I think I know what the answer is, but do you use the Gospel Library?
Well, of course I use the Gospel Library in the search. I really like it.
Oh, you like the search function in the Gospel Library?
Yes, I like the search function. I like the topics, where they do the gospel topics in the library. I've used some of the films. There's all kinds of things in the gospel library.
It's a library, so it's got a lot of things in it, obviously.
It's a great advantage to a teacher.
Well, the new version came out. Have you done a search on the newer version? It's been out for about a month now.
I don't think so.
Okay. You can now...
It's been July.
Yeah. Well, you can pick a category like conference talks or the scriptures. And then they also have something you can tag that says exact quote, So, and so you can, in fact, you can even break it down by date, and you can break it down by a general authority.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah. So they've
It'll help you on the search for sure.
Yeah, it's greatly in doing that. Well, so what would you tell people who are finding it difficult to study the scriptures?
Well, the prophet's asking you to do it. Shape
so
up.
You do it.
I don't know. It's, life gets crowded in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no question about it. When you sit down and plan to do it, something else will interfere. So, I don't know. You just, it just becomes part of your daily routine.
Yeah.
Comb your hair, brush your teeth, read your scriptures, kind of thing.
Well, I've interviewed women who have got 4 or 5 children under 6 running around and a newborn in their arms. And when I've interviewed them, I'm surprised I even had time to be interviewed, but they said, one said, the only time I can study the scriptures is when I'm nursing. And she said that might be 10 or 15 minutes and at a time, and that's great. I think some of us in the church think that, studying the scriptures means a half hour or an hour. I've actually done extensive research on any of the general authorities that said how long we should study the scriptures. And I only found one quote, and I don't have the memory you have, but I believe it was Benson who was quoting another prophet that said 30 minutes sounded like a good idea, but it was kind of in passing. So we're not told how long to study, we're just told that we need to get into the scriptures and actually study. Yeah. Do you have any special technique you use in studying? I mean, you obviously have pen and paper with you.
Yep.
Anything else?
It's hard for me to study on a device or the computer.
Okay.
And I've written books on each one of the scriptures.
Yes.
Okay. Just books. Yeah. And what I like to do is study till I learn something new.
Oh, okay.
And say to myself, I wonder when the Lord put that in the Book of Mormon. Why did I not see it before? So that's kind of a little technique I use.
Yeah, I've always looked at people who have been in the church their whole life and very active members, and they've been studying every day for their whole life. And I go, okay, but when you get to first chapter of Nephi, what do you get out of it now? But I've learned that there's always something new there to learn.
Yeah, there's always something new.
There's something new.
Because different phases of our life, what's important to us. Anyway, that's kind of how I do it.
Well, we're going to see it differently. Well, I've enjoyed the time with you.
Thank you. It's been fun. It's nice to get to know you better.
You've had just a wonderful life, and you've got such a wonderful sense of humor, and just.
Hey, thanks.
And so it's just been an honor to be with you. Well, I always ask my guest at the end if they would mind sharing their testimony.
Okay. Well, I feel it an honor to do that. We live in a time when people are saying they have so many questions about the church, and as a result, they're leaving. And I always say, I found so many answers, I'm going to stick it out. So with that, my testimony, I was born in the covenant, even though I grew up in Long Beach, right? And baptized by my father, and loved my parents. And they were incredible examples to me, so much so that my dad every morning would read the stock pages, and my mother was always a theology teacher in Relief Society, and so she would always read the scriptures. And I always vacillated between the two. Which one would I be? So obviously, teaching finance, it appeared like I was going to be more like my dad. But then the opportunity to teach religion kind of made me feel more like Mom. Teaching religion, I love being a teacher. I love the students, and when you love the students, you love the subject, and passionate about both. Wow, it makes it just wonderful. So through these years, I've taught the Book of Mormon, at least 20 plus years. I know that Joseph Smith was a prophet. I know that he translated the Book of Mormon by the gift and power of God. I have been privileged through my life to know and love many of the men who have lived to be prophets. My aunt used to have a front row seat because she was a widow of a general authority, and I would break through those lines at conference to run down to sit on her lap so I could watch them. I've seen them in action. I wrote the biography of President Ballard. Truly, they are men of God. They are prophets. I know that Jesus is the Christ because of the atonement. Obviously, that's why I can talk to you. And I am so grateful for the blessings the Lord has given me. And like all of you, I pray for the blessings I don't have. And hopefully one day I'll be able to say, wow, my bucket's completely full. It really, all those blessings came to pass. But the answer is, if you're not a member of the church, wow, look into it. There's blessings, there's peace. If you are a member, stick with it. There's blessings, there's peace. And I say this humbly in Jesus' name.